Chapter 2, Part 1. A year is a long time to a young man. All through that spring, Gawain was able to push thoughts of his coming quest into the corners of his mind. He was busy with better things: the travels of Arthur's court, the tournaments and feasts. Easter came. On every hedge-bank bobbed bright daffodils, trumpeting the joy of the returning spring into the sharp March wind. New life stirred in nest and bud, and death seemed like a dream. The Green Knight seemed like a dream too, half remembered, hard to believe in now that the dark nights were over and bright sunshine lit the land. Except that Gawain noticed people treating him with a careful kindness, and girls gazing at him with a sadness in their smiles, as if they knew that he would not be there when Easter came again. Summer was next. The wheat in the long fields ripened as golden as Gawain's own hair, and the green shadows in the woods began to remind him of what lay ahead. He woke in the warm nights from dreams of the Green Knight sharpening his axe. Then harvest time, when the cruel scythes flashed and the songs of the mowers rang across the hillsides, and wagons heaped with grain heaved their way to mill and granary. The berries reddened on the brambles, the leaves began to turn, and Gawain knew that it would soon be time to leave. He lingered as long as he could. He did not want to say goodbye to Camelot. He could not believe that 3 seasons had sped by so fast, and that winter would soon return. But there was no denying it. Flocks of falling leaves flew down, red and brown, to settle on the waters of the moat. One morning, the fields around the castle were white with frost. On the day after the Feast of All Souls, Gawain went to his uncle King Arthur. "My lord," he said, "you know the promise that I made? Now the time has come that I must keep it. I must ride north to find the Green Chapel and meet whatever doom awaits me there." Then King Arthur was filled with sadness. It felt so unfair that this fine young man, at the start of his life, should go seeking his death. But death was better than dishonour, and Gawain would be dishonoured forever if he broke the oath that he had made. So Arthur nodded and laid his hand on his nephew's shoulder and prayed for him. Then he called for the gift that he had prepared for Gawain, a new suit of armour from the royal armourer. A red carpet was spread upon the floor, and the gleaming gear laid out on it for Gawain to put on. Steel shoes in segments like giant shiny woodlice, bright greaves and cuisses to armour his legs, a coat of steel rings stitched over costly quilting, armless and gauntless, bright metal, tough leather. Dressed in it, Gawain felt splendid, braver already. It fitted so perfectly, was hinged so carefully, that it seemed to weigh nothing as he walked outside to where his horse waited. His white mare, Gringolet, tossed her head when he drew near, glad to see him, and joyful at the thought of a journey, not knowing, as he did, where their road would lead them. All Camelot seemed to have come out to watch as Gawain climbed into the saddle. Knights gathered round him, wishing him good luck. Ladies leaned from the windows, scullions peered from the kitchen doorways, all thinking how sad it was that such a brave and bright young man must ride away and be killed just because of a rash promise, a Christmas game. But Gawain had promised himself that he would show no sadness. He settled himself in the saddle and King Arthur handed up his new shield, which was red and bore in gold a 5-pointed star, the pentangle or endless knot, the symbol of purity and truth. Gawain thanked the king. He slung the shield on his back by its stout straps. He raised his hand in farewell, and then, before anyone could make sad speeches, he kicked Gringelot's flanks, and she trotted out of the courtyard, through the high gates, across the drawbridge. The people of the surrounding country had all come out to see him off. They lined the road outside Camelot as he cantered past them, and off and away. Past the fallow fields he rode, over the commons, a lonely traveller under a low grey sky. A wind from the north blew cold on his face, and as he crested the hill beyond Camelot, winter came to greet him, flinging handfuls of hail. And so Gawain went on his way, with no clear notion where he was bound, and only a name to lead him there. Wherever he stopped on his journey, at the castles of friendly lords or the thatched huts of poor folk, he asked the same question. "Have you heard of a place called the Green Chapel? For I must meet the Green Knight there on New Year's Day." No one knew of it. No one had heard of the Green Knight or his chapel. So Gawain rode on, while winter deepened and the roads grew worse. Soon there were no houses to stay at, rich or poor. He lit his fires in lonely places and saw the fire glow, flicker in the eyes of the wolves that watched him from the woods. He slept, wrapped in his cloak, and woke sometimes to find it had grown a coat of cold white fur of frost in the night. The road led always upwards, barely a road at all anymore, just a track, a scar, a stream bed along which poor Gringelot waded knee-deep. This was the wild north country. Even the words were different here, so far from Camelot. The fierce tumbling streams were called becks or gills. The hills were fells, and the cold lakes, lying cruel as mirrors in their hollows, were called tarns. Wet bracken lay purple on the steep fell sides, and the frosted paths wandered whitely through it towards places steeper still. Sharp summits scratched at the sky, and the clouds bled snow. There among the knuckled crags, wild men made their lairs. They hurled down stones on Gawain as he skirted the scree slopes. Shards of stone bounced from his shield and rang on his armour. He drew his sword and he shouted challenges. "Come out and fight me, you cowards!" But the wild men just hooted with laughter. Fair fights were not their way. Their shouts rang from the rock faces. They threw down more stones, seeking to stun him. A sharp slate struck his saddle and sliced through the strap of a satchel where most of his supplies were stowed. His food and possessions were strewn over the screes, and the wild men squabbled over them, while Gawain's scared horse took off at a gallop. Wild men weren't the worst that those hills had to show him. Worms writhed from the waters. Wolves howled on the heights. Giants harried Gawain over the high tops, shambling and roaring. And that's the end of part 1.